So here's the first template from our crowdsourced cash flow projections workshop. And if you've downloaded the template, taken a look at it, I just wanted to give you a couple pointers. Where I could, I tried to use conditional formatting, especially for the red flag triggers. That was one of the more interesting things that we had talked about. The red flag triggers and the conditional formatting, they may not work perfectly here in this template, depending on if you use this in Excel or if you use this in Google Sheets. So, and most of the formulas here should work. I'm using dummy data, synthetic data for all of these. And so this may be a template that you could use. It may be grossly oversimplified, but I hope that at least gives you an idea of how you would make these calculations or where you would find this data. And then it should work as a calculator where you can do some basic work with it and then maybe take that into, a projection that you're using. So once again, I'm Josh Oakhurst from Datateer. We do construction data analytics. We don't typically do this kind of Excel work. We do dashboards and reporting and visualizations. But as we talked about in the workshop, nobody could really show us the good reports that they're doing in Excel for cash flow projections. So that's why we wanted to, crowdsource something and do something with you. So we're actually going to take this into our practice and build reports around it. But for the interim, here's the best Excel spreadsheet that we could come up with that hopefully you find some value in. So very quick, just want to run through it. Handful of tabs here that relate to each of these KPIs that we came up with. You can see here, I'm pretty sure that this red flag trigger works for the overhead coverage. You could choose whether it's cash on hand or it's the contracted cash. I think some people are going to do that pretty differently. Obviously, these numbers are pretty low, but again, synthetic data. Credit buffer, this was another one. Pretty straightforward there. Again, I don't know if this is realistic to any of your data. This is probably the more interesting one that shows the cash flow curves. Now, for this one, once you get into it, you can see I've got 5 projects over here that shows the outflows, the cumulative outflows, the inflows. I didn't do a cumulative inflow month over month, but we do have the net, and then we have the cumulative net. And once you do that in whatever spreadsheet program you're using, you should be able to either do a pivot table from it or use, built-in Microsoft Copilot or use, Gemini and Google Analytics and say, hey, actually, let's graph this and make a cash curve. So this graph right here is not interactive. Our reports that we make, this is what we specialize in. We specialize in taking data from your ERP and then giving you, up-to-date graphs, that change when your businesses change. So, but if you're just using it here in this template, do a pivot table or ask, the AI helper AI Clippy to make you this graph, and you should be okay here. You can see that setting the project budget is important. You probably have to do that manually. And then this gets really tricky. This was really tricky. And this is where I think is like, I don't know if this like 15% deviation from mean in terms of what is our typical cash curve look like. You can't do it on an absolute basis because you might have a $2 million project. You might have a $40 million project. And so this was like one way that I came up with, well, it should be based on, and you should be able to normalize all the budgets, and then it should be based on sort of the typical flow. So what percentage of a project's budget, regardless of how big that project is, flows out within the first, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 months. Again, maybe that gives you an idea on how you want to use this. The template itself, it might not be real world enough for you. Cash break even. I love this part of the conversation. Is the PM funding the project with our cash or the owner's cash, and when do we get into the black? Most of this conditional formatting should work. What does this look like for the 13-week cash flow? This conditional formatting, I couldn't get to work, so you can see here what you can do just by example. And then the covenant headroom. This is going to be an individual basic. This is super simple, but at least you have this metric.